On Independence Day and Republic Day, it's usual netizens share wishes and colorful images with friends. Nobody bother about true stories of prominent leaders and their sacrifices to this wonderful nation. I request everyone to share these unfolded facts of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose to all your friends and family. 23rd January marks the birth anniversary of Subhas Chandra Bose, popularly known as Netaji, who was one of the most prominent Indian freedom fighters. The day is celebrated as Parakram Diwas, or the Day of Valor, in India. To commemorate his 126th birth anniversary, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday 23rd January 2023 virtually Indian National Army inaugurated a model of a proposed memorial dedicated to Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. On Subhas Chandra Bose Jayanti, here are 6 facts to know about him. Bose was born in 1897 in Cuttack, into a wealthy Bengali family. He was sent to study in England, and upon his return to India in 1921, he joined the nationalist movement that was led by the Indian National Congress and Mahatma Gandhi. He rose to become the president of the movement in 1938. However, differences arose with Gandhi with respect to the course of the national movement. Bose resigned in 1939. While Gandhi firmly believed in a non-violent approach in the freedom movement, Bose stood by a martial approach. Bose would go on to hem the Indian National Army, an armed unit that was formed during the Second World War and fought under the Japanese Empire's command. He spent time in Germany, attempting to shore up support for India's freedom. It was there that he raised an Indian regiment comprised of those taken captive by the Germans and Italians. He is believed to have been given the title of Netaji by members of the regiment. Bose is believed to have died in August 1945 in a plane crash in Taiwan. But the version of events is contested to this date, with some believing that he survived the crash and went to hiding. In 2015, the Indian government had decided to declassify certain files related to Bose. They are available at www.netajipapers.gov.in. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose remains one of India's most revered icons, with every political organization trying to shine in his reflected glory. His historic charisma is so great that some Indians believe he is still alive. Many more believe that he did not die on 18 August 1945 in a plane crash in Formosa, as every major biography of Netaji says. One theory is that it was a ploy set up by Netaji himself to hoodwink Allied forces and reach a safe place to continue his struggle. Another says that Netaji became a recluse and settled down in North India. And another insists that he was betrayed by Nehru and Gandhi and imprisoned in a Soviet gulag. In recent years, these theories have eclipsed the life and achievements of Netaji, reducing them to a prelude to a political murder mystery. All theories must stand the test of investigation, and in recent years, 2 incidents allow us to investigate afresh. In 2015, the West Bengal government released a set of files related to Netaji and his family from the state archives. Soon after, in January 2016, 304 Netaji files were declassified by central ministries. Inside the Netaji files. Contrary to popular belief, these central files were not the only batch to be released, rather, they were the last lot. Since 1997, the Government of India has released a total of 2,324 files and has categorically declared in Parliament on 2 March 2016 that there are no more classified Netaji files left in its archives. They present a wealth of data on the numerous independent investigations into what happened to Netaji in August 1945. Early investigations. Asked about investigations into the death of Netaji, most people will recall the Mukherjee Commission, as well as the Shanwaz and Khosla Commissions. Before the first of these was appointed in 1956, however, 6 formal investigations were carried out on the plane crash at Taihoku. Importantly, these were carried out by the British Army, the Government of British India, the Government of Japan, and the Allied forces. The reason was simple: the British and Americans wanted to establish if Netaji, the most uncompromising of the Indian nationalists, whose Azad Hind Fauj had fought against them in the Burma and Imphal campaigns, was alive or not. These investigators had one advantage, that is time. As we know from every detective novel, the earlier investigators get to the site, the better. Investigations by Allied forces. Soon after Japan's surrender on 30th August 1945, Admiral Mountbatten sent a request to General MacArthur for an inquiry about the death of Netaji. On 19 September 1945, the Japanese government submitted a preliminary National Armory report to M.C. Arthur's office. Among other details, it stated that Bose was injured in an air crash on 18 August 1945 and died the same evening. Independent of the Americans, in September 1945, the British India government sent to Superintendents of Police, Finney and Davis, assisted by Inspectors H. K. Roy and K. P. Day, to Bangkok, Saigon and Taihoku to investigate the same question. Davies and Roy interrogated the in charge of the Saigon airport, the military officers at Taihoku airport, and a chief medical officer at the Nanmo Military Hospital of Taipei. The Bangkok team complimented them by retrieving a telegram, dated 20th August 1945, sent from the Chief of Staff of Japan's Southern Army to Hikari Kikan, a body set up to liaise between the Japanese government and the Azad Hind government. Using the code T for Bose, the telegram read, T, while on his way to the capital, Tokyo, as a result of an accident to his aircraft at Taihoku at 2 p.m. on the 18th, was seriously injured and died at midnight on the same date. These two investigations clearly concluded that Netaji was dead. But rumors continued in India that he was alive and would return, and the popular support for the Indian National Army veterans unnerved the British. In mid-1946, Colonel John G. Figgis, a senior British intelligence officer on attachment in Tokyo, carried out another round of investigation into the fate of His Majesty's opponent. Between May and July of 1946, Figgis interrogated 6 Japanese officials in Tokyo. The most important testimony he collected was of the Japanese doctor, Toyoshi Tsuruta, who was present at the Nanmo hospital where Netaji was taken after the crash. Figgis wrote, Bose asked Dr. Tsuruta in English if he would sit with him throughout the night. However, shortly after 7 o'clock he suffered a relapse, and although the doctor once again administered a camphor injection, he sunk into a coma and died shortly afterwards. Figgis submitted his report on 25 July 1946. He concluded, it is confirmed for certain that Subhas Chandra Bose died in a Taihoku military hospital sometime between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. local time on the 18th August 1945. The medical officer in charge of the military hospital at Taihoku was Dr. Yoshimi Taneyoshi. After Japan's surrender, he had been imprisoned at the Stanley Jail in Hong Kong. His testimony was recorded there by Captain Alfred Turner of the War Crimes Liaison Section of Taiwan in October of 1946. He said, when he was laid on the bed, I personally cleaned his injuries with oils and dressed them. He was suffering from extensive burns over the whole of his body, though the most serious were those on his head, chest and thighs. There was very little left on his head in the way of hair or other identification marks. Yoshimi further testified. As most of his speaking was in English, a request for an interpreter was made, and one was sent from the civil government offices named Nakamura. He informed me that he had very often interpreted for Subhas Chandra Bose and had many conversations with him. He appeared to have no doubt that the man he was speaking with was Chandra Bose. After the 4th hour followed by his admission, he appeared to be sinking into unconsciousness. He murmured and muttered in his state of coma, but never regained consciousness. At about 11 p.m., he died. Yoshimi repeated the same sequence of events few years later, before both Shanwaz-led Netaji Inquiry Committee in 1956 and the 1974 Justice G.D. Khosla Commission. Furthermore, in one of his later interviews in 1995, Yoshimi said, "A lieutenant called Nonomiya told me, this is Mr. Chandra Bose, a very important person, and that I should save his life at any cost. That's how I knew who he was." He also recalled that when it seemed obvious to him that Chandra Bose's condition was sinking, he asked the patient, "What can I do for you?" Bose replied, "I feel as if blood is rushing to my head. I would like to sleep a while." Yoshimi gave him an injection, and Bose died soon after. In January 1956, when India sought Japan's permission to conduct an inquiry into Netaji's death, Japan shared another report, comprising interviews with 13 witnesses, including Netaji's co-passengers and the doctors who attended on him in the military hospital in Taipei. Among other things, the investigators noted that when the pitch of the propellers was hiked, upon the plane reaching a height of 20 meters, one petal of the three-petaled propeller of the left wing was suddenly broken, and the engine fell off. The airplane, subsequently unbalanced, crashed into ballast piles beside the strip of the airport. Immediately after the plane's fall, the passengers on board escaped from it, but as the persons in the front deck were soaked with gasoline in auxiliary tanks all over their bodies, they suffered serious burns. Lieutenant General Shide and other two men died within the plane. Mr. Chandra Bose, wrapped up in flames, got off the plane. Adjutant Rahman and other passengers exerted themselves to take his clothes off, but as his thick sweater for cold weather was permeated with gasoline, his whole body was seriously wounded by burns. In the hospital, in spite of several injections of heart stimulant and artificial aspiration, he could not survive. By his side then was Dr. Tsuta, interpreter Nakamura, Netaji's companion Habibur Rahman, and a guard. In addition to other findings, the report mentions that Chandra Bose cremated remains were handed over to Mr. Iyer, and the articles left by Mr. Bose to Mr. Murthy by Lieutenant Colonel Takakura on 8 September 1945 at the Imperial Headquarters in Tokyo. In June 1956, on India's request, the UK asked the Formosan government to interview employees of the military hospital and Taipei Municipal Health Centre. The Formosan government sent the eyewitnesses' accounts to the UK mission, who in turn sent it to the government of India. The Formosan report cast no doubts on the details of the crash or the subsequent death of Netaji. Private investigations. The first Indian investigation was conducted by Harin Shah, a war correspondent of Bombay's Free Press Journal. Shah visited Taihoku in September 1946 and published his findings in his book, Verdict from Formosa, The Gallant End of Netaji, Subhas Chandra Bose. One of the highlights of Shah's investigative journalism was the testimony of Zanpai Shah, a nurse at the Nanmore Hospital. She confirmed the account recorded by Figes in September 1946. She said, "He died here. I was by his side. He died on 18th August last year, Subhas Chandra Bose. I am a surgical nurse and took care of him till he died. I was instructed to apply olive oil all over his body, and that I did. Whenever he regained briefly his consciousness, he felt thirsty. With slight groaning, he would ask for water. I gave him water several times." She also took Shah to the ward and the bed where she said Bose had passed away. Entry of the Indian Independence League. In 1953, members of the Indian Independence League carried out an investigation based on circumstantial evidence and individual contact. The Indian Independence League, by then defunct, had been the civilian administrative wing of the Provisional Government of Free India. The Indian Independence League members agreed with the previous reports that Netaji had passed away on 18 August 1945. They concluded, however, that the aircraft crash had not been an accident but an act of sabotage. According to the Indian Independence League, Japanese officials could neither risk shielding Netaji from the Allies lest he resurface, nor hand him over and endanger relations with India. To save herself from the wrath of both India and the occupation forces, Japanese officials first diverted Netaji's plane, separated him from 5 of his 6 associates, and allowed only one to travel with him. Japan still maintains 3 Netaji files as secret, while other countries have declassified them. The first Government of India inquiry. Notwithstanding these investigations, the demand for an official probe into the fate of Netaji continued to grow in India. In 1956, the government formed the Netaji Inquiry Committee to inquire into the circumstances concerning the departure of Netaji from Bangkok about the 16th August 1945, his alleged death as a result of an aircraft accident. The committee consisted of Shahnawaz Khan, a former Major General in the Indian National Army, and then Parliamentary Secretary, Netaji's older brother Subhas Chandra Bose, and S.N. Matra of the Indian Civil Service. Its findings are a voluminous work, digitized and available in the public domain today. The committee examined 67 witnesses, including 11 eyewitnesses, who confirmed Netaji's death as a result of burn injuries. They cross-examined 5 of the 6 persons who had accompanied Netaji on his last flight from Bangkok, including Habibur Rahman. The committee could not visit Taihoku, the crash site, as India did not yet have diplomatic relations with Formosa. On concluding its inquiry, the committee prepared a 3-page draft report. It contained the principal points agreed to, which all 3 members signed. These included that 1. There had been an air crash at Taihoku on 18 August 1945, in which Netaji met his death. 2. That he was cremated there. 3. The ashes lying in the Renkoji temple in Tokyo are his. Strangely, soon after signing the draft report on 2 July 1956, Subhas Bose took a different view and did not sign the final report. The final report, signed by Khan and Matra, was submitted on 3 August 1956. It was accepted by the Indian Parliament in September 1956. Subhas Bose's dissenting report, dated 9 October 1956, concluded that the aircraft accident did not take place and Netaji did not die. It was also tabled in Parliament. Besides his conclusions, Subhas made some personal allegations against Nehru, Khan, Matra and B.C. Roy. A decade later, in February 1966, Subhas Bose announced to the press that his brother, Subash, would return in March. Obviously, that did not happen, but his dissident report added to some people's belief that Netaji was alive and the controversy on Netaji's non-appearance was not resolved. The committee was criticized for not visiting Taihoku, and also because neither Shahnawaz nor Matra had judicial experience. And the appearance of a Sharda Nanda Sadhu at Sholomari Ashram in North Bengal in the 60s, who many believed to be Netaji incognito, led to persistent demands for further inquiry. The Second Government of India inquiry. Thus, in 1970, the Government of India formed the Justice Khosla Commission, under retired Justice G.D. Khosla, to inquire into all the facts and circumstances relating to the disappearance of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose in 1945. Unsurprisingly, nothing new came out of the Khosla Commission. Justice Khosla interviewed 4 of Netaji's co-passengers and 5 eyewitnesses to the crash. Over a period of 4 years, he also interviewed Shahnawaz Khan, Subhas Bose and 224 other witnesses. He concluded, like the others before him, that Netaji had been grievously injured by the aircraft crash at Taihoku and died the same night. Yet the Khosla Commission also patiently recorded news sightings of Bose, of an MP's chance meeting with him at Marseille's airport in 1946. One of an ardent admirer of Bose, who claimed that a Soviet army officer saw a well-dressed Bose publicly government of India to the Kremlin with high dignitaries on 24 December 1956. Another claim about Bose languishing in cell number 45 of a prison in Siberia. Still others submitted photographs purportedly showing Bose visiting Peking in 1952 with a Mongolian trade union delegation, and in the same year, a Socialist Party member meeting Netaji dressed as a Burmese monk at Rangoon's Ena Lake. As story upon fantastic story piled up, Justice Khosla rightly wondered to what extent fantasy and perversion of truth can proceed. When counsels for the Forward Bloc Party and the Bose family argued that the general disbelief about the air crash was due to glaring discrepancies in the statements of witnesses, Justice Khosla recorded, "The discrepancies do not falsify the crash. They are due to passage of time and the memory of witnesses becoming somewhat vague regarding matters of detail." Most significantly, the report records Netaji's nephew Amya Nath Bose's deposition. "I remember in December 1945, my father Subhas Chandra Bose took Netaji's death for granted. He was very moved by seeing the Netaji's watch and said, 'Same watch. Same watch.' 10 investigations, 1 conclusion." In Brothers Against the Raj, an authoritative biography of the Bose brothers, Dr. Leonard Gordon concluded, "The tremendous weight of evidence, I believe, supports his death following the crash." Gordon's conclusion was based not only on the preceding investigations, but also his own interviews with witnesses and co-passengers, done in 1979. He also noted that those who want to dispute this heavy weight of evidence will do so. Their claims are usually based on emotion, not reason, and so any reasoning will not suffice. Gordon was right. Even with these investigations by recognized authorities at home and abroad, many people, including some of Netaji's family, would not accept the findings. They prefer to believe tertiary, quaternary, and quinary evidences. Thus, the government's third inquiry commission, the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry, formed in 1999, more than 50 years after 1945. In 2015, the West Bengal government released all the secret files related to Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose from its state archives. The central government followed suit in January 2016, declassifying the remaining 304 files on Bose, bringing the final number to 2,324. On 2 March 2016, the government declared in Parliament that there were no more classified Netaji files left in its archives. From these files, we now know that between 1945 and 1974, 10 investigations took place, conducted by the British Army, by the Allied Command based in Japan, the Government of British India, the governments of Japan and Formosa, the Government of India, and also by individual journalists and followers of Bose. All of them concluded that Netaji died on the night of 18 August 1945, after being grievously injured in an aeroplane crash at Taihoku, Taipei Airport. However, even after these direct inquiries by recognized authorities at home and abroad, many Indians could not accept their findings. In 1999, half a century after the incident, the Vajpayee government appointed a third commission, led by retired Justice Manoj Mukherjee, to get to the truth that all the others had apparently missed. Entry of Justice Mukherjee. The Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry concluded in 2005 that there is no proof of a plane crash at Taihoku Airport on 18 August 1945. Mukherjee also concluded that Netaji did not die in the plane crash and the ashes in the Japanese temple are not of Netaji. Although tasked to find out how, when and where Netaji had died, the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry did not provide those answers. Public memory is short, and the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry has gained quite a bit of support over the last decade. But a detailed examination reveals a great deal about the basis of its conclusions. A local newspaper across the sea. In his report, Justice Mukherjee was prudent to note, if really there was a plane crash, the news about the same would have been published in the then local daily. He then referred to the Central Daily News, which had carried no report on any plane crash at Taihoku in late August 1945. This was Justice Mukherjee's first big mistake. He assumed that the Central Daily News was a local daily of Taihoku in 1945. In reality, the Central Daily News was the official newspaper of Chiang Kai-shek's Nationalist Party, the Kuomintang, and was based in Chongqing, on the Chinese mainland. It became a local newspaper of Taipei only after 1949, when the Kuomintang was defeated and fled to Taiwan. Justice Mukherjee had referred to the wrong newspaper and failed to find evidence there of the crash. This fundamental flaw led him toward further erroneous conclusions. In 1956, the journalist Harin Shah had deposed before the Shanwas Committee, sharing the names of two local newspapers, the Taiwan Didi Shimpao and Taiwan Nichi Nichi Shimbun, which had indeed published news of Chandra Bose's death due to the plane crash. Shah and a Japanese witness, Komatsu, also mentioned that a small obituary notice appeared in the papers. Shah's testimony was available to the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry. Yet Justice Mukherjee never examined these newspapers, nor even mentioned them. Separately, the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry ignored the government of Japan's record that Lieutenant General Tsunamsa Shide, one of the co-passengers on the plane, was killed in a crash at Taihoku on the same date. The altitude of the aeroplane. Perhaps the most dramatic misrepresentation in the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry is in Para 4.6.3.2. There, Justice Mukherjee writes, as testified by SW4 Habibur Rahman, to the Shanwas Committee, the plane had nosedived from a fairly high altitude, possibly over 12 to 14,000 feet. He concluded that Habibur was bluffing, as 7 of the 13 passengers had survived the crash, implausible, if the plane had fallen from that height. However, Habibur Rahman had never made this claim about the plane's altitude. Where did this 12 to 14,000 feet statement come from? In the 1956 Shanwas Committee report, it is written that Habibur narrated that they were flying at 12 to 14,000 feet from Turin to Taihoku, their previous flight, not after taking off from Taihoku. Justice Mukherjee cherry-picked this figure of 12 to 14,000 feet and pasted it onto the height of nose diving after takeoff from Taihoku. He also accused Rahman, Chandra Bose's closest confidant, of making out a story. Absence of evidence as evidence of absence. The Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry noted that in March 2003, the mayor of Taipei, in reply to a question from an Indian journalist, wrote that there is no such records of a plane crash in Taipei on that day. Justice Mukherjee disregarded what Lin Lingsen, a minister of the Taiwanese government, clarified to the same journalist. On 5 August 2003, Lin wrote, the precise retrocession date was on 10/25 in 1945. Prior to that date, 25 October 1945, Japanese colonialists were still responsible of not only military but also civilian activities in Taiwan. Unfortunately, after reviewing all handed-over records during the period from 14 August 1945 to 25 October 1945, there was no evidence shows that one plane had ever crashed at Old Matsuyama Airport in Taipei. The Taiwanese authorities had explicitly stated that their report was based on limited handed-over notes and that Japanese authorities had retained control until 25 October, well past the date of the air crash. Justice Mukherjee concluded against the plane crash based on incomplete data. But absence of data in limited records is not proof that an event never happened. The curious case of Ichiro Okura. Only two people were eyewitness to both the death and cremation of Bose, Habibur Rahman and the interpreter Juichi Nakamura. Both had deposed to the Shanwas Committee in 1956 that Netaji was cremated on 20th August 1945. Dr. Yoshimi, the hospital doctor, testified that the body had been taken from the hospital on the same date. Habibur added that he had collected the ashes the following day. While the death certificate, supposedly signed by Dr. Yoshimi, has never been retrieved, the cremation register of Taihoku municipality records that 4 males were cremated between August 19 to 21. Justice Mukherjee failed to unearth the details of these 4 individuals. Instead, he obtained details of another male deceased, Ichiro Okura, who died on 19 August 1945 and was cremated on 22 August, 2 days after Bose, as deposed by Habibur Rahman and Nakamura. The journalist Harin Shah had speculated that Okura's body might in reality have been that of Bose, cremated incognito. The Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry report concluded that Okura's death and cremation had been passed off as those of Netaji, and rejected that conclusion. That is, it only referred to Harin Shah's report in order to reject this detail, while ignoring Shah's more crucial information on Taihoku's local newspapers. A priest and a DNA test. On 13 August 2003, the Home Ministry authorized the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry to evaluate the feasibility of a DNA test of the ashes stored at the Renkoji Temple in Tokyo. Some experts did advise that less charred bone pieces, if present, might be usable for a DNA test. Accordingly, Justice Mukherjee wrote that he wanted active cooperation of the temple authorities. The request was sent to the chief priest of Renkoji by the Ministry of External Affairs. In letters dated 25 April and 31 May 2005, the Ministry of External Affairs informed the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry that the chief priest had no objection to a DNA test on the remains in his custody. His only requests were that he would keep a portion of the remains in the temple and that, in recognition of their dedication in keeping the ashes for 60 years, his name and that of his father, the chief priest before him, be engraved on the pedestal of Netaji's statue in India. Yet despite being informed that the chief priest had consented, the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry wrote another letter to the Ministry of External Affairs on 20 May 2005, asking it to persuade the temple authorities to accord their consent to selection of potentially less charred bone pieces from the casket. The Ministry of External Affairs apparently took no cognizance of this letter, and the Commission, 6 years into its tenure, was wound up over the following months. In his report, Justice Mukherjee concluded that he could not proceed with the DNA test on account of the temple authorities' reticence. A conspiracy theory becomes official. These errors of omission and commission raise the question of whether the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry was looking for those leads that could be construed as contradicting the previous inquiry reports. In his build-up to rejecting the evidence of a plane crash, Justice Mukherjee summarizes. Netaji's death therein and his cremation was engineered by the Japanese army authorities including the 2 doctors and Habibur Rahman, and then aired on 23 August 1945 through a statement prepared by Sri S.A. Iyer at the dictation of the aforesaid authorities to give imprimatur of the Indian National Army to the death news of Netaji. Justice Mukherjee did not enlighten readers as to how and why a defeated Japanese authority, sitting in Tokyo in those days of limited communication, amidst of post-war chaos and destruction, had engineered the testimony of 1. 2 Japanese doctors stationed in Taihoku. 2. Indian National Army officer and loyal confidant of Bose, Habibur Rahman. 3. Indian National Army officer S.A. Iyer stranded in Saigon, and then maintained their supposed secret in the face of repeated investigations over subsequent years and decades. And the Japanese motive? The Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry gave no answer. The real mystery remaining. Justice Mukherjee, who had meticulously visited the archives in Russia, never queried the Japanese government for anything, despite Netaji being in their care when he was last seen. He made no attempt to access the 5 Netaji files still kept secret in Japan, and he interviewed just a single witness in the country, despite his eventual conclusion that Chandra Bose's death and cremation was engineered by the Japanese army. When the report was tabled in Parliament, short-duration discussions under Rule 193 were held on 18 May and 26 July 2006. Prabodh Panda of the CPI and Subrata Bose of the Forward Bloc respectively made half-hour and 90-minute-plus speeches. The government gave replies to Panda's 9-point and Chandra Bose 23-point questions. 13 parliamentarians, from across parties, joined in the discussion. 12 general questions were answered. Further, the government prepared an action-taken report and placed it before the Parliament on 7 August 2006. The gist of the 26-page report on Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry findings is as follows. No source supports the Commission's claim that the aeroplane had attained a height of 12 to 14,000 feet before nosediving. The Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry had said that Dr. Yoshimi shared a death certificate in 1988 which cannot but be a manufactured one. This conclusion was not valid. The evidence provided by Dr. Yoshimi to the earlier investigations was found to be consistent, and it was not credible that he would manufacture a death certificate merely to put the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry on the wrong track. Besides, the copy of the certificate accessed by the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry was in English. The report does not indicate whether they examined the original certificate. The Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry did not investigate the antecedents of Ichiro Okura or try to establish that there was a real person of that name to disprove the theory that it was in fact Bose. The Commission has not given sufficient grounds for its conclusion that Netaji was dead. If Bose did not die in the plane crash, where has he disappeared? The Commission claimed that Netaji might have disappeared from Taipei. But it would be impossible for someone like him to stay hidden in some corner of Asia or elsewhere, running away from his cherished dream of freeing India from foreign rulers. Under no stretch of imagination can it be said that he was coward, and seeing that the Japanese were surrendering and the Russians were aligning with the Allied forces, he would give up the fight for independence, leaving his comrades in the lurch and live a secluded, indolent life in some corner of this planet. This simply does not fit in with the fiery and indomitable character of Netaji. At the end of the several deliberations in Parliament, on 7 August 2006, Home Minister Shivraj Patil explained that the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry had not completed its primary mandate, answering where, when and how Bose died. In addition, glaring shortcomings had been exposed in its investigation. Hence, after taking due care of all observations, the government would reject its findings. Many today still hold the view that the government rejected the findings of the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry without explanation. This belief is so prevalent that in 2006, 43 members of the Bose family issued a statement urging the government to provide a full explanation for its rejection of the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry report. Thus, although 10 investigations have concluded that burn injuries from the aeroplane crash led to Netaji's demise on 18 August 1945, and one was inconclusive, conspiracy theories continue to swirl through social media, fantasizing over the final phase of Netaji's life and turning one of India's greatest sons into the victim of a cheap whodunit. Thanks for watching this video. I am Saloni from New Delhi. I work so hard to create a business, stock markets, forex, commodities, investment, and informative news videos. To appreciate my work, please like and share my videos with your friends and family. Please leave your comments. Your comments encourage and improvise my work. Subscribing to my channel and clicking over the bell icon is the only way for you to get in touch with me more often. Please subscribe to my channel. Have a great day.